back to Thought Crime and Keto and Crime. We've got the last part of Jodi Arias and Travis Alexander, the crime and the trial and the aftermath. Let's get right into it. A huge shout out to my patrons and my channel members. Couldn't do this without you. Love you. You can join them down below. Also, I highly suggest you check out parts 1 and 2 of this before you partake of this. I'll link those up above. Anyway, guys, let's delve right into it. Last time we left off with the lead up to what we know is inevitable, the death of Travis Alexander in around June 4th of 2008, when he had uninvited Jodi Arias from a Cancun prepaid legal services trip to invite another woman that he had affection for, but also broke up with him just before. So this soap opera just keeps going. Just before the June trip, he had uninvited Jodi Arias about the last part of May, and it was 2 days after that, on May 28th, when her grandparents reported a break-in at their Yreka, California home, and among the things taken were a .25 caliber automatic Colt pistol. Keep that in mind. So now we fast forward to June 2nd. Jodi Arias starts on a trip west for a trip to Salt Lake City. And on June 2nd, she calls Travis Alexander between 1 and 3 a.m. She did not get through to him. She did leave a couple of voicemails. And then she arrived in Redding, California at 5:39 on June 3rd, rented a car for her trip there, and then she headed out again for Salt Lake City by the evening of June 3rd and kind of disappeared from the radar at that point. Meanwhile, Travis Alexander was due on a important prepaid legal services conference call the evening of June 4th, and they were scheduled to leave for Cancun around the 8th or 9th. So when he missed that conference call, it set up a lot of alarms, because it's not like Travis to miss a very important work conference, especially since he was in the process of rebuilding his business. Also on that day, Arias met up with a friend of hers in a Salt Lake City suburb called West Jordan. Her friend noted that her usually blonde hair was now dark again. She had gone back to being a brunette, and she had weird looking cuts on her hands. But he didn't say much about it. They hung out in Salt Lake City for a few days, and on June 6th, she headed back for Yreka. Meanwhile, after attempts to get in contact with Travis had failed by Mimi, and his friend Michelle, Mimi was due to leave for Cancun with him on the morning of June 9th. On June 8th, Mimi called a few of her other friends, the man she was currently dating, a man named Dalton, and their friend Michelle decided they were going to go over to Travis's house at 11428 East Queensboro in Mesa to check on Travis, because he by this time had missed several work calls. Chris Hughes was worried. A lot of people were worried. And it was just not like Travis to disappear, especially since they were due to leave the next morning. Mimi was especially worried. So they headed over to his house. They got Taylor Suro, his business partner in the shirt business, on the phone. He still had not heard from him. And they were due to leave the next day at 9:25 a.m. on the flight to Cancun. So they just head over to Travis's house. Now remember, Mimi had recently broken off their dating relationship in favor of this new man, Dalton, but she still had a key to Travis's house. So when they arrived at the very dark house, she had a key. She unlocked the front door, and they went into the little sitting room area. Immediately, Napoleon, the little pug, ran up to them. She petted him. He had food, he had water, so she knew somebody, at least the roommates, had been taking care of the dog. Now, the first thing they noticed immediately upon entry was a pretty foul odor. But, you know, a bunch of guys live there, so it could be just about anything. They went inside. They went to Travis's office in the den. Everything was in there on his desk. They found his laptop, his cell phone, his wallet, everything that should have been packed for their trip the next day. Also, his Honda was sitting outside, so they knew that he had not left. They headed up to the second floor, where the smell kept getting stronger. They went past the beanbag chairs in the projector room. They heard some noise in the room opposite of Travis's room. And so they knocked on the door, and his roommate, Zach Billings, was watching a movie with his girlfriend. They asked him, had he seen Travis? He said, not in a couple of days. He's in Mexico. And they said, no. Mimi said, no, I'm supposed to be going with him. We're not leaving until tomorrow. So he goes, well, let's look for him. Let's check his room. So they go across to Travis's room. They try to open the door. It's locked. Zach runs downstairs to the key tree and finds a key to his bedroom. Comes back up. They unlock it. Zach and Dalton tell Michelle and Mimi to stay put, and they go into the room. As soon as they step into the room, they are overtaken by a putrid stench. As they go further into the room towards the walk-in closet, in the hallway that leads to the walk-in closet, they see blood everywhere, as if something had been drugged alone. They step into the closet. There's blood in the closet. And then when they almost cannot stand the smell when they step into the bathroom, but there is literally blood everywhere. And when they approach the shower, they see the remains of Travis Alexander, full of blood, congealed blood. It looks as though his throat has been slit from ear to ear. And yeah, I can only imagine the looks of that. Of course, all four of them run out of the house, and they make the following 911 call. I'm going to put a timestamp down below in case you don't want to listen to it, but I'm going to drop that right here.
He's dead in his bedroom. We hadn't heard from him for a while. We think he's dead. His roommate just went in there and said there's lots of blood. I didn't go in, but I can give you the phone to someone who went in there.
Yes, please, can you?
Hello.
Hi, so what's going on?
He's dead. He's in his bedroom.
Okay.
In the shower.
Okay. How did this happen? Do you have any idea?
No, we have no idea. Everyone's been wondering about him for a few days.
She said that there was blood. So is it coming from his head? Did he cut
No,
his wrist?
it's all over the place.
Is there any weapons around?
No, I don't know. Not that I saw.
How many people are in the house?
How many are in the house right now? Just the 5 of us? 5 of us.
Okay, I need all of you outside.
Okay.
Hold on just a moment. Okay, you're a good friend of Travis's, correct?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
Has he been depressed at all? Thinking about committing suicide, anything like that?
I don't think he's been thinking he committed suicide. He's been really depressed because he broke up with this girl, and he was all upset about that. But I don't think he would actually kill himself over that.
Has he been threatened by anyone recently?
Yes, he has. Okay. He has an ex-girlfriend that's been bothering him and following him and slashing tires and things like that.
And do you know the ex-girlfriend's name?
do you remember? Yeah. What's his ex-girlfriend's name? Ask Taylor.
And do you know if he's ever reported it to the police?
Her name is Jodi. I don't know if he's ever reported. Hold on. Yeah. Ask Taylor if he's ever reported Jodi to the police, like if Travis did. No, he hasn't reported anything about Jodi's behavior.
Okay, and you guys left the roommate. When was the last time he saw Travis? Was it 3 days ago?
When was the last time you guys saw Zach? Travis. They want to know what's from the roommate.
Last time I saw him was, last Thursday or Friday?
The last time I remember seeing him was last Thursday. When was that Mimi saw him last Tuesday, or last Monday. She talked to him last Monday.
Okay.
A lot of 3 or 4 police cars arrive on the scene a few minutes later and start taking the victim's statements. Also, they start to survey the scene and rope it off. Meanwhile, Detective 𝗬𝗿𝗍𝗍 arrives and starts questioning the witnesses. And then he ventures into the house as the chief investigator. When he went up to the second floor where Travis's remains were, he noticed a camera bag that had no camera in it sitting in the projector room on the second floor. He thought nothing of it, but did note it. He went into the bedroom. He surveyed the carnage. He walked through the walk-in closet again, noticing the trail of blood, and into the master bath. There he examined the terrible scene, and according to both him and later on medical examiner 𝗂𝗏, Travis Alexander had been shot in the face. That appears to be the death knell. So hopefully he didn't suffer as bad as we think he was, because he was shot first in the face, in the head. So they believe that probably ended his life. But in addition to that wound, he had a gash from his one ear to the other. His jugular vein had been severed, and as well as his trachea and the carotenoid artery had been slashed. And then in addition to that, he had at least 27 other stab wounds in various places on his body, as well as defensive wounds on his hands. Now, maybe after she shot him, he was, flailing around a little bit, but I'm hoping he didn't suffer as badly as the murderer evidently wanted him to suffer. I guess that's just my optimism that it was quick. He also noted that he had already was in a state of rigor mortis and was bloated and decomposing, because they estimated the time of death was June 4th. It's now June 8th, going into the 10th, when they found him. So he's in a bad way. The detective said obviously he fought for his life. These blood splatters are definitely from somebody moving around, though later on they said that the shot to the head was probably the first. He walked back down, he walked past the laundry room. He had an inclination to go check the washing machine, but because when they had entered Travis's room, they realized that the bed was stripped, and there was all the sheets, all the linens were gone. So he wondered if maybe that was where he had been killed, and maybe this evidence was in the washing machine, but he did not want to investigate that without first getting a warrant. So he went outside. He asked all the witnesses to please come to the police station, and he interrogated them all, particularly Zach Billings, who he asked, how did you not know that your roommate was dead in the other room? And he said, look, we're just roommates. We're not really friends, so we don't hang out. I honestly thought he was in Mexico, and everybody else corroborated that he was supposed to be going to Mexico. The other roommates were also questioned. They, again, thought Travis was gone, so there was really nothing there. So Detective Flores gets his warrant, and goes back and thoroughly checks the scene, including the washing machine. When he opens the washing machine, he sees some soaked, bloody bed linens in the washing machine. They take those out, they bag them as evidence, and then in the very bottom of the washing machine, submerged in several inches of water, is a digital camera. And he remembers the camera bag on the second floor in the projector room, and he says, I wonder what we can get off of this. So he picks it up. Obviously the camera won't cut on because it's been submerged in water, but he also knows that they have a memory card, and maybe something can be gotten off the memory card since the memory card is encased. So he takes that as evidence as well to their computer and forensics people to have it analyzed. The SD card was analyzed. They were able to get a few pictures off of it. I'm going to drop a couple here. These are the most ungraphic pictures of anything on the roll, and probably pretty much shows Travis Alexander's last few moments alive. I'm going to drop that here. And then the most interesting part of the film, of the roll of film or memory card at the time of the 80s, was some faded pictures that showed Travis already bleeding and dead on the floor with a silhouette of a female in the background, as well as some photos of somebody obviously moving his body. So that's how they estimated that the smears got all over the hallway and the closet, was that after the body was probably killed in the actual outer part of the bathroom, and perhaps the victim had maybe crawled a little bit before he finally died, and then whoever killed him moved him back across the hallway through the closet into the bathroom and then threw him in the shower. And they didn't take much time to try to clean up the bathroom, that's for sure. Meanwhile, on the 911 call, they had named Jodi as a potential suspect, Travis's friends. And so they decided to call her in for questioning, which they did. Meanwhile, they looked up her record and realized that her grandparents had reported a .25 caliber pistol missing on May 28th, and it just so happens that a .25 caliber round was found near Travis's body at the murder scene. So the plot thickens. Over the next month, Jodi Arias was questioned many, many times, and during her interrogation, she acted very strangely, especially when there was no one in the room and she didn't think the cameras were on, maybe. But she acted very strangely, from doing handstands to singing to kind of laughing incoherently. I'm going to drop kind of a montage of that here. I want to give a shout out to PK, the PK report, for doing some great trimming here. Give them all the credit. If you'd like to check them out, I'll drop their channel down below. Lots of great stuff there. But here that goes.
Still beating. It might change my memory. Goodness. regardless of what the Bible says. And yes, I'm Christian. I just live my life.
But the most pressing was that in her early interrogation, Miss Arias said that she had never been to Mesa on the day that Travis supposedly died. And then after further pressing and them confronting her with the pictures, she kept trying to say those were from a different day, and he goes, no, they're time and date stamped, Miss Arias. We know that you were there, so why don't you tell us the truth? She came up with a story how two men had broken into the house and attacked and killed Travis, and that she begged for her life and they let her alone. And then when they confronted her with the evidence that they had taken blood samples from her, that after they did the autopsy on Travis, they found that her blood was commingled with his blood. So she had to be there and quite intimately involved. And that's when she broke down to the Maricopa County detectives, Flores, that she had in fact killed Travis Alexander, but she did it in self-defense because he attacked her. She said that in the middle of their weekend romp, she had dropped his expensive new digital camera, and he got so enraged at her that he came at her like a linebacker and chased her through the second floor. She didn't quite make it to the door of his room when he got her, and so she killed him in self-defense. Though her story didn't really make sense because she never talked about picking up the gun, and the fact that all of the blood was all over the bathroom, not anywhere in the room except for one congealed puddle next to the bed. There was no evidence that any struggle ever happened other than Travis perhaps fighting for his life. So on July 9th, thanks to a preponderance of the evidence, Maricopa County, Arizona grand jury indicted Jodi Arias for first-degree murder in the case of Travis Alexander. Travis Alexander was laid to rest at Riverside's Olivewood Memorial Park near his grandparents' home. Fast forward almost 4 years. December 10th, 2012, jury selection finally began for Jodi Arias' trial under Judge Sherry K. Stevens in Maricopa County. There was already a huge controversy, several attempts by Jodi Arias' defense team. Initially, she had requested permission to represent herself. The judge had no problem with that. But after everything came down, she realized she was in over her head and did request a public defender. And so several attempts had been made to get the trial moved because they suspected she could never get a fair trial. But this was one of the most heavily televised trials of all, and when a trial is heavily publicized, it's almost impossible to get a fair trial anywhere in the country, and nowadays anywhere in the world, because people know all about the trial. So they made the distinction to just go ahead and have it in Maricopa County. During the jury selection, Jodi's defense team put up that prosecutor Juan Martinez was systematically excluding women and African Americans from the jury. I have no idea why that would have been a reason, but I guess they were grasping at straws here. But Judge Stevens ruled that he had showed no bias in the jury selection. Opening arguments began January 2nd, 2013. Martinez sought the death penalty. Jodi was represented by a co-counsel of 𝗟𝗏𝗏 and Jennifer Wilmot. Jennifer Wilmot did the majority of the litigating in the courtroom, and they put up a defense of justifiable homicide by self-defense. They called her friend Ken Burns, the one that had saw her in Salt Lake City, Utah, with these strange cuts on her hand. He testified. They also testified to the fact that her grandparents had had a burglary in May, which led to the stealing of a .25 caliber handgun. That it was the similar bullet was found next to Travis's body. Many of Travis's friends and co-workers, including and members of the church, including the Hughes, including Tyler, including his roommates, including neighbors, all testified that Jodi was becoming stalkerish where Travis was concerned, and that Travis had called her a sociopath and the worst thing that ever happened to me. And he was afraid of her many, many times. Finally, after all of this, the prosecution rested and the defense called Jodi Arias on February 4th, 2013. She testified for a total of 18 days. And during that round of questioning by both her team and the prosecution, it's still an unprecedented length of time for an accused murderer to be on the witness stand. Many times they don't even testify. Everything kind of centered around her alleged child abuse as a child. She accused her parents of various things, I think, to set up a mental illness defense. And then she kind of set up the whole defense that she was a mentally abused partner and physically abused partner at the hands of Travis Alexander. In one line of questioning, she was asked, did he have deviant sexual behavior? And she told them about all the kink and fetish things that they did together, and then alluded to some texts that may or may not have made Travis a predator, and all kinds of things to show him as a predator that was forcing her into deviant sex, had forced her to convert to Mormonism, and then attacked her, forcing her to defend herself. And then on cross-examination, prosecutor Martinez kind of picked everything apart by saying that no evidence of pornography of any type was found on any of Travis Alexander's electronic devices, that no evidence of bruises or otherwise defensive wounds were found on Arias during her medical examination, and the fact that she attempted to call Alexander after she had killed him and left 2 lengthy voicemail messages was evidence enough that she had pre-planned this and premeditated this, and it was not self-defense. After Arias finished her testimony, the defense called several witnesses, including psychologist Richard Samuels, who described Arias as in a fight or flight mode, that she was suffering from PTSD and may not have even had knowledge that she was hurting Travis at the time. On the counter to rebut the testimony of Richard Samuels, the prosecution called Janine DeMarti, who actually testified that what the defense witness was saying was not true, that even though Jodi Arias may have some mental illness and that she may be possibly suffering from borderline personality disorder and anxiety disorder, that she was in complete and total grasp of her own facilities and knew exactly what she was doing. And so, with that, the first stage of the Arias trial, the guilt phase, came to a close. In Arizona, there's 3 different phases for every murder trial: guilt, aggravation, which is really basically an argument about whether or not it was premeditated, and then the penalty phase. And if you're found to be premeditated, then they do either put the death penalty on the table or take the death penalty off the table. So on May 7th, 2013, after 15 hours of deliberation, the jury found Jodi Arias guilty of first-degree murder. On the jury, 5 of them found her guilty of first-degree premeditated murder, and 7 jurors of first-degree murder, premeditated, and felony murder together. But as a result, she was found guilty of first-degree murder. And then they enter, on May 15th, 2013, the aggregation phase, where they talked about the condition of the body, things like that, more forensics to show if it was premeditated or not. And Prosecutor Martinez again showed photos of the remains of Travis Alexander, and after less than 3 hours of consideration, the jury determined that Arias was eligible for the death penalty. Later in May, the penalty phase, where they would actually decide her fate, life in prison with eligible for parole, life in prison without parole, or the death penalty would be considered. During many interviews, Jodi Arias said that she would rather die than spend her life in prison, but right before this penalty phase began, she changed her mind and said that it wouldn't be fair to her family. On May 21st, 2013, she, along with victim statements of the victim's family, she was allowed to give her own statement, and this is where she put out a plea about how she was being abused and how she knew she could do some good by teaching illiterate women in prison how to read, how she would donate all her hair to 𝗥𝗲𝗹𝗃, and how she had created a t-shirt, a plain white t-shirt with the word survivor on it, and how all proceeds to that would go to victims of domestic violence. And I'm going to drop a few clips, selected clips, from her passionate plea for her life right here.
Be seated.
She said, I know they're going through hell. Yet nothing drove that point home for me more than when I heard them speak last week. I never meant to cause them so much pain. When Stephen said he read on Travis's 3x5 card that it said call Stephen, and that he never got that call, I know that's because of me. And when Samantha showed us the last picture that she took with Travis, I know it's because of me that will always be the last picture that she'll ever take with Travis. Throughout this trial, I've avoided looking at Travis's family for a variety of reasons that I won't go into, but I've wondered, where is his grandma? Is she here? I didn't learn until last week what happened to her. Samantha said that Travis was the glue to their family. Around Thanksgiving in 2007, Travis called me. He was really upset. He said his grandmother was ill and frail, and that he didn't. It was Carl's idea to hold my portrait in this Christmas family photo taken a few years ago. My parents were there, my siblings were there, my brother's wife was there. From now on, this is how my family is going to spend the holidays with me. Following my arrest, I wanted so much to avoid trial. Not necessarily the outcome, although that's naturally not something I was looking forward to.
That mitigating evidence. You shall not consider rebuttal evidence as aggravation. You must decide the appropriate sentence based on the facts of the case and by applying these jury instructions. You must not consider the financial cost of any possible punishment when deciding whether to sentence the defendant to life in prison or death. While all 12 of you had to unanimously agree that the state proved beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of a statutory aggravating circumstance, you do not need to unanimously agree on a particular mitigating circumstance. Each one of you must decide individually whether any mitigating circumstance exists. You are not limited to the mitigating circumstances offered by the defendant. You must also consider any other information that you find is relevant in determining whether to impose a life sentence, so long as it relates to an aspect of the defendant's background, character, propensities, record, or circumstances of the offense.
On May 23rd, the jury retired to the jury room to come up with their sentence, and the result of that was a hung jury, 8-4. In favor of the death penalty, but it had to be unanimous. So it was this part ended in mistrial. On May 30th, the District Attorney Bill Montgomery said that they would be moving forward with the more evaluations of Jodi Arias. They did not want to put a mentally ill woman to death. If it could be helped, her defense used this as an excuse to declare everything a mistrial. And so for almost a year, it went back and forth between prosecution and defense, more mistrials, more hung juries, more appeals, until finally she was granted a new sentencing trial in 2014. October 21st, 2014, a new sentencing phase began where her now very much well-prepared defense laid out the defense that the prosecution had to admit was true, that the evidence that Martinez had presented, that Travis's electronic devices did not reveal any threats or evidence of pornography or anything like that on it. He had to admit that there were viruses that could have wiped out that evidence, as well as people to dispute the fact that she had defensive wounds on her hands and things like that. So it went well into December, and the court had to end on holiday break. When they resumed in January of 2015, more back and forth. And finally, it resulted in on March 5th, 2015, in another hung jury in which Judge Stevens just declared a mistrial. And then on April 13th, the judge invoked judge's privilege and sentenced Arias to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. And it is estimated that this trial cost the people of Arizona $3 million. And since then, she has been incarcerated in Arizona, and her defense team has filed appeal after appeal after appeal. The latest one being in 2019, where it was asserted that Martinez, the prosecutor, had been accused of sexual impropriety, sexual abuse, and has since been demoted by Maricopa County, and that as a result, her trial should be thrown out and she should be granted a new trial because he obviously had a prejudice against women. We're going to wait to see how that turns out, I suppose, but that's where it stands. She sits, I think, just where she belongs, in prison. This was a very long story, I know. I apologize for its length, but I think it warranted a good deep dive. And I hope it serves as a warning to others that obsessive love is not good love, and that at any point, hundreds of points during this saga, either of the people could have backed away and possibly saved someone's life. So I guess this goes out. Don't use people, and don't allow yourself to be used, because it never turns out for the good for anybody. And with that being said, I'm going to sign off. I'll be back next week as we dive into more Daybell books. Until then, Keto Krime.